I really wanted an intro to this podcast that was a Nas song called "Spicy," and I was listening to it in the car, and I was like, "Oh my god!" The track, the instrumental was just like, "That is a perfect podcast intro." And number one is our editors were like, "Hey man, you gotta buy the copyrights to do that." And I'm like, "Son of a gun! I thought you could do like 8 seconds free use. Maybe you can, maybe you can. I don't know." But then I listened to it on my phone and it did not sound the same. I was in my car with a Bose surround sound system, and it was like, boom, it was, like, moving me, and I listened to it on my phone, I'm like, "This sounds terrible."
See, it was meant to
It
be. It
was.
was it wasn't supposed to be our
No,
song.
no,
That's
but
so fun.
but if you ever, if you can go back to the '90s, all of you watching or listening, like, check out Nas "Spicy." It's a good song.
That's funny because when I used to do the radio show, because it was a radio show, we could use any music, right? So that I had Pharrell's "Happy," "I'm so happy," like, and that came on because it got me pumped up before I started the radio show. But when you're podcasting, you got to pay for the rights and everything. Radio, you can use it because you're already able to do it.
Well,
So
look,
that's pretty cool.
certain times you're able to make choices and certain times you aren't. It's just that's how life, that's how work, that's how running a business could be. And it's funny, the other day, someone was asking me, they're like, "How the hell did you retire at 45?" And I said, "It's because I'm rich." And they looked at me like, "What an asshole." I was at my volleyball league and like, "What an asshole." And I'm like, "No, no, no." I'm like, here's what being rich really means. It means the more money that you have, if you have more money or you make more money, your life doesn't change because you have more. Like that's really what being rich is all about. And that's what most of our clients are aspiring to is that financial freedom. And most people don't ever put it in an understandable way. And it's really like if you were given X amount more money, would your life change? If it wouldn't, you're rich.
Right.
Like, that's really the definition of what we're all striving for, and whatever revenue stream that we're building is to get to that point where you can do and have everything you've ever wanted. And it sounded like a little condescending to this guy until I explained it, and he's like, "Oh, shit, that makes a lot of sense."
Well, I think a lot of when you don't understand it and you're not used to hearing it, you all have your interpretations of what things mean. And that's why when we're working with people, we have to really dig into what do you really mean by that? What does it really mean to have flexibility and freedom? And that's the biggest thing that we hear from most of our accidental CEOs is they all want flexibility and freedom. And a lot of times as you're working in your business and you're working on growing your business, you sometimes forget why you got into this. And you and I have been having conversations too about what do we want from all of this and what do you want to come out of it? And a lot of people don't know their full intention. It's just like I just didn't want to work for anybody else anymore. And that's a lot of accidental CEOs, right? They were employees and now they started a side hustle and now they're in their own business and they just didn't want to work for anybody else anymore. They wanted to have more control over their life. But is that really what you want out of your business? And I think so many new business owners don't know why they're in business. And that's why they struggle with making choices and trying to find the right path forward. And they don't have the clarity because they're so overwhelmed by all the ideas running through their brain.
And what do they do about that?
And what do they do about that? They have to make choices. To go back to what you were saying earlier about making choices, you have to make choices every day for what you want to do moving forward. You have to make choices every day on all of the decisions that are going to lead you to the vision that you want for your business and your life. But if you don't have that vision, you can't make the choices, you can't make the decisions, and then you feel powerless because you feel like those choices were taken away from you. And as a business owner, you have to stay in control of your choices and recognize that everything is a choice.
Well, I mean, maybe everything's a choice, but you get to a certain phase of your business where you don't make the choices anymore. The business or your clients or your employees make those choices, and it can feel really stressful. Like it's a bad situation when you built something that now you work for, and people get depressed and they get. We had a client that said, if it all fails, whatever, I'll be okay. It was a good shot." And it's like, no, that's not what it is you're in a different phase of your business now. When you get to the point that things have to change and you're not willing to change, you're gonna fail, whether that be financially or mentally. And you don't want to put yourself in a position where you built something incredible that actually cannibalizes you and your business. You want to have the ability to say, okay, that section is done and I have to move on to the next phase. And that's where most of our clients have gotten stuck. It's like they reached the pinnacle and they thought that was the pinnacle. It's not. That was step 1. And like now you have the choice to go to step 2 instead of just sitting and wallowing in what is currently your business or your life.
Well, we have said to many people that the excitement and the energy around making and coming up with the goal is much higher than when you actually achieve the goal. And I think that's what you're like when you get to that first pinnacle, you've reached that first major goal, that first major milestone. And there is sometimes a letdown and there is sometimes that demotivation to continue. And that becomes a choice as to what is the next step, what is the next goal, what's the next milestone I want to achieve. But again, your milestones have to be based off of a very long term vision of what you have and want to do, because if you don't have that, you don't know what the milestones are going to be. You don't know what each checkbox is going to be on your journey to getting to that destination. And what we've said in the past too is the work is the goal. The work is the goal. Being able to continue to work. I was talking to a client earlier today and he said, "It was so great to get to this point, and now I have these problems that I want to take on." So he's reaching a point in his journey where he recognizes, "Wow, I finally have the opportunity to solve more problems, and how great because I've been working to get to this point." And he's excited by it, but he still has a lot of choices to make, and he's wavering on some decisions, but the thing is he knows that if he trusts his intuition, he will make the right decision. And that's one of the things that we work so hard to help our clients with is trusting your gut and going with your gut when you're making decisions, when you're making these choices, because they will lead you in the direction that you're supposed to be heading. And if you continue to lean into those inherent intuitive decisions, you will always continue to make the best decision in that moment with the information that you have. And that will help you to decide what is really the next milestone that you're trying to accomplish.
And sometimes you don't even need to make a good decision, right? I've said this in the past that a bad plan is better than no plan at all, right? Because it allows you to start taking action. And when you take action, you learn things. And when you learn things, you can pivot to something that's better. And too many people are worried about perfection inside of what's the next step they take in their business. Where man, if you just trust your gut and say, "This is the thing I really feel I should do," and try it, you're gonna learn. You may fail, but you're gonna learn how to then take a right turn into the thing that is correct. But without it, you're just paralyzed and no decisions get made, and you go back to the way things used to be. And that's what too many people do when they're at a crossroads of making a big decision. If they don't trust their intuition and they can't go out there and find evidence logically to say this is the path forward, they go to what's familiar, the old things that got them where they were, but will definitely not get them where they wanna go. So you gotta just take these little micro chances. They're it's so important. And here's a big way that you can go out there and take micro chances. We have many of our clients do what's called a sprint. And what this is, we're always planning for, what's your 5-year business plan? What are you going to do in the next quarter? But you can have a sprint of some kind of challenge, project, opportunity that you're going to work on for a much shorter duration. It could be 2 weeks, it could be 6 weeks, whatever it is, but it could be a very short lived challenge that you're going to put yourself through. Because as you build your business and when you have become the CEO of your organization, it's kinda hard to find new wins. It's just business as usual is what's coming in, and there's no growth around you. It's sustainable growth, but it's not this massive growth that you're looking for. So in order to kinda move the ball down the field, you may need to take this short-lived sprint and watch what you can accomplish in that period of time, either by yourself or with your team or on a new project. And that will give you inspiration of like, holy shit, we can actually do something pretty incredible. Doesn't mean you're going to do that thing for the rest of your career. It doesn't mean you're going to add it to your offers. It just means, hey, I'm challenging us as a company to do something incredible in a very tight period of time. And you'll find that either you have a big win and you're like, woof, I'm motivated, or you'll have a big failure and you're like, wow, I learned so much from that. But we have to put these on ourselves because the growth that you'll have at these certain points where most of our clients are is not even noticeable anymore.
Mm. So true. I mean, sometimes we don't even notice it. Like I'm guilty of this, right? We signed a few new clients and it was like, yeah, we signed a few new clients. It wasn't I didn't go woohoo like I tell everybody to go woohoo and celebrate. And it's because and we did a sprint. We really went intense the last several weeks and making sure that we build and build and build and okay, we got the people and then it was like, okay, what's next? It wasn't we didn't take the time to celebrate. We didn't take the time. But you have to take that time to really appreciate those moments when you have that win because you need it as fuel to move you to the next thing that you have to continue to do and it's never stopping. You know, everybody thinks there's an end point. There is no end point. That doesn't exist. Just like perfection doesn't exist. It's continuous learning, it's continuous development, it's continuous work, it's continuous. The secret life of a business owner is to embrace that there is continuity throughout every single thing that you do. You have to build continuity. You have to keep moving and know that this is going to be a continuous process. It's never done. It's the only time it will be done is when you lie down, close your eyes, and you're dead. That's it. That's the only end point that we really truly have as physical human beings is death itself. So if you're trying to get to a point where you think it ends, then you're misleading yourself. And that's the biggest struggle that I see a lot of people in they want to get to that point and they think, "Oh, once I get to that point, it's going to be better. Oh, when I get to that point, it's going to be great. Or when I get to that point, it's going to be awesome and I'm not going to have to work as hard." And the thing is you're going to work harder when you get to that point. So stop fooling yourself in thinking that when I get to this end point, things are going to get better or things are going to improve because it's not the case. It's a continuous learning, it's a continuous development, it's a constant evolution. Because if you don't evolve, what happens is you die. If you don't change, you die. That's the bottom line. And you have to continue on that journey and recognize that you're just going to keep going for the milestones and the next yard like you use sprint for example, right? The next hurdle. You know, when I was a track runner, I very rarely did sprints and hurdles. But when you do a hurdle, you're just focused on what's happening in between that hurdle. And then when you get to the hurdle and you jump it, then you're only focused on what's going. And that's how you have to run your business. You have to focus on what's in between those two hurdles so that when you get to the next hurdle, you focus again on what's in between because that's the continuity we're talking about.
It's a good analogy, a good metaphor. I like it. The one of the major things about when you're running a business is you have this plan and you say, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to achieve this thing and it's going to take this long and I have to do these pieces in order to get there. But here's what I'm going to let you know is every time I've run a business, that has been one of the most exciting parts of the business is the planning phase and the optimism. And I have not ever gotten to the end of that destination and was as excited as when I planned getting there. So what you have to really do, understanding that this is a journey, there's no destination. You're literally just you keep going on this path is you change drastically as you achieve your milestones and goals. And the things that once excited you and you strived for are now just normal everyday things that you do. So if you are looking at it today as when I get to the finish line, I'm done, you're gonna be disappointed. And you will not have the ability for longevity in a business if you're constantly disappointed. And I don't mean about, you lost a sale or a great employee left you or, revenue got tight for a month or big bills came in or anything like that. What I mean is you're disappointed in your success. And what many people do is when they start approaching the ability to succeed, they sabotage it because there's nothing beyond that point, and they're like, "Holy shit, this is about to be over, and I don't want it to be over. I'm actually enjoying it, and once I get there, it's all done." So they find ways to just destroy what they're building or completely pivot off of it. And that's where if you can say, "Okay, there's this lifetime journey. There's no end to what I am doing." Okay, you can decide to stop anytime you want, but there's no end to it. This allows you to constantly be motivated, inspired, and have the discipline to move forward each and every day at the new step that you're on, at the new level that you've achieved, working with different people that you've always aspired to do. That's what business is really all about.
You know, you create a lot of new problems when you get to that point. A lot of accidental CEOs, when they reach a milestone like you're talking about, they start to create new problems for them to solve that are really not problems at all and things they shouldn't even be focused on because they don't know what else to do next. They don't know what the next thing is supposed to be. And we're seeing this especially with one of our clients that has really become the CEO of his business, that he has stopped creating some problems, but he's also feeling like he's useless and he's bored and he's not as impactful, and a lot of accidental CEOs, you have to remember, are doers, right? You maybe were a former employee and you started a side hustle and now you got to run a business and you fell into it and you didn't know what you were really getting yourself into. And the thing is that you were the doer, you were the builder, you were wearing 17 different hats. You were doing all of that. And when you get to a point, if you've evolved yourself in the right way, you get yourself to a point where you have a team and you're delegating and you really go into a new role that you never realized you were gonna go into. And what a lot of people will do is they'll slip into still being the employee and being the doer, and if they don't have stuff to do that they're used to doing and comfortable doing, then they feel useless, right? So it's because you've gone into a new role that everything is new, you don't know what to do, so your doing is very different than what you used to do. And I know it's a little play on the words, but doers are people who build businesses. CEOs are people who get people to do things for them, right? And that's the big distinction that has to be made is that when you get to certain milestones and you find yourself delegating and not doing as much, it means that you have new things to do that you don't know that you have to do. And that's why we always say being the CEO has two jobs: being a revenue generator and being the person who develops the product, the process, and the people. And the reason we say that is because those are the only two things as the CEO you need to do. And you have everybody else to do all of the other work that you once did.
Yeah, you're creating, they're implementing, right? That's the difference between being a CEO and being an employee. A CEO creates, right? They're creating revenue. Okay, they're not selling, they're creating revenue. They're creating products, they're creating processes, they're creating these people to then implement all that stuff. That's the major separation. And when you move from being a doer, especially if you came from corporate world and then started your own business, when you come from being a doer and then have to be a leader, it is really hard to stop doing and just start creating and allow other people to do. You can get stuck in it and you can micromanage it for lack of better words, which means you're taking away the ability for the people that you have asked for help and paid them to do what they're great at. And you're really destroying yourself because you're not giving yourself the ability to go create more. And that's that space that you have purchased through hiring help, whether it's a vendor, an employee, a freelancer, it doesn't matter. But you didn't delegate something, you bought back your time. But now you have to decide to use it wisely, which is to create. That's all you are doing. That's what you did when you built your business. You created a business. You didn't buy a business, right? You created one. And that's what you have to continue to allow yourself to do. Because every time you create something, you will create something new for you to do while the others around you are doing what you originally intended.
You mentioned before that the micromanagement is that doing. And that micromanagement really comes from your controller saboteur and not being able to let go of the things that you once did. So you micromanage the people to do the way you want it done, the way you would do it. And that controller really can create a very, very difficult work environment for people. It doesn't allow people, we want people to use their strengths, and that's why we hire them, because usually you hire people that are stronger in something than you yourself are strong at, because you want to create that. And I'm going to use the word balance here because that's what it really is. It's the balance between your weakness and their strength that allows things to keep moving and keep the lights on. But when you are micromanaging, your controller is not allowing that other person to exercise their strength. And then it becomes like, why did I hire them in the first place? And then you wind up overwhelmed and you just lost all the time that you really brought back by having these people work for you. And but recognize that the micromanager is the controller saboteur. And the controller saboteur will try to lead you down a path where you still continue to do everything, because if you do everything, it'll get done right. And if you don't do it, it's not going to get done right. So don't let the controller fool you. If you've hired people recently, lean into their strengths. Give them the work that they need to be doing that you don't need to be doing. Give them the things that they're supposed to do that they're really good at, because if everybody's using their strengths, you're going to form this great team, and it will allow you to buy your time back and get your time back because your team has got it and they are capable. And once you see that, your controller saboteur will start to relinquish and back down, because you'll start to see a different perspective on it.
These podcasts that we do and the clips that we put out there on social media, when we share all this stuff, it really resonates with many people. And if it's resonated with you, we created an assessment. This assessment is going to allow you to understand what phase you're in and what you need to do next, right? We created this, it's a free thing. We'll put it in the show notes or something, but it's really hard to understand where you're at and what next steps you need to make when you're so focused on what you're doing each and every day. And that's why we share all this stuff. It's because we've personally been there. We were accidental CEOs that became intentional CEOs. We've helped so many people like that, where they just all of a sudden were like, wow, I have something that's kind of successful, but I didn't plan on leading it this way, running it this way, doing these things. And we have to have the ability and the vulnerability to step back and be like, "Oh shit, this wasn't what I expected, but I can chart the path forward the way that I want to do things." And that may be getting help, it may be scaling down, it may be, taking advantage of a different opportunity, but you don't know that. You can't really know what you need unless you look at yourself, right? It's like everybody who's out there who's selling any business coaching or like next greatest system to do or any of these gurus that you see on social media, like all they're really doing is giving you their lottery numbers for the winning ticket that they had last year. Like that's it. And that's wonderful for them, but it's not going to help you specifically. Right? And that's what you really have to have the ability to do is figure out like, okay, where am I? There's great things. I've read tons of books. I've attended seminars. I've had my own coaches. All these things are wonderful, but you have to be able to implement it for what you need at the time you need it and the way that works for your organization. And education and information is wonderful, but the implementation of that isn't verbatim, right? We're not doing lab experiments here. You're building a business. If you wanted to build a lab experiment, buy a franchise, and that's not what you wanted to do. You wanted to build something incredible that you've created. So you have to continually create that. And yes, you can use wisdom and information from other people, but in your own way. And that's what our assessment really allows you to do is see like, okay, well, where are you at? I know traditionally what phase a business would be at here, but where are you at and what do you need next? So take that. It's free. It's 5-minute assessment. Take it, see where you're at, and hopefully you'll learn something from it. So, all right, Tom, let's wrap this thing up, pal.
All right, man. So I wanted to just add one point to what you just said. Accidental CEOs go through identity crises. Okay. And that's what part of this assessment will help you to identify with is where you're at as that CEO, right? As that accidental CEO. You go through an identity crisis. And what happens is you listen to all the gurus and you try to figure out where all the gurus are going and you try to do exactly what they're doing. And then you forget why you started doing what you're doing. You have to remember to remain unique in everything that you are doing in your business. You can innovate. Take other people. We do it all the time. We take other people's ideas and we figure out how that will work best for our clients, our business, our way of doing things so that we make it a unique differentiator instead of making it somebody else's differentiator that we're trying to implement in our business. You don't want to do that. You want to remain unique because you got into business for a very specific reason. And whatever that reason is because you knew you could do something better than somebody else and you want to now succeed in that. But if you get sucked into the gurus, if you get sucked into somebody else's identity, you are going to fail massively because you're not them. Like Adam said, your lottery numbers are different than theirs. The lottery numbers that come in that, so everybody's giving you their lottery numbers based on the success that they had last year, it's because it worked for them, but your lottery numbers are going to be different. And if you get away from being unique, you will fail and you won't have the success that you really set out to have from the very beginning. So remain unique, pick your lottery numbers for your own success, and you will definitely find it. We're having this we have accidental CEO workshops that we sponsor every week. There you can sign up through our LinkedIn profiles and wanted to make sure that we put out there that we want you to come find out a little bit more about us, work on your business. We go through several questions on how to rethink and reframe how you're thinking about things in your business. So the accidental CEO workshops, they happen on Wednesdays, and we do them at different times of the day. And we have even in-person workshops for people that are on Long Island. So we'll also put that in the show notes so that we'll put a link to the landing page for that so that you can sign up for any one of those. And we encourage you to check it out.